Black woman was abandoned by her billionaire husband in Seoul. He never expected her next step. The city of Seoul shimmered like a sea of stars brought down to earth. From the 68th floor of a glass-walled penthouse overlooking the Han River, everything looked perfect, almost unreal. Neon lights danced across the skyline, reflecting off sleek skyscrapers and endless streams of life below. Sarah Benson stood barefoot by the window, her fingers lightly resting against the cool glass. She should have felt lucky, blessed, chosen, and once upon a time, she did. A soft breeze slipped through the slightly open window, brushing against her silk robe. The room behind her was immaculate, designed with precision and wealth in mind. Marble floors, minimalist decor, and a quiet that only money could buy. But tonight, it felt empty. Her reflection stared back at her, elegant, composed, but distant. "How did we get here?" she whispered. 3 years earlier, everything had been different. She could still remember the first time she met Daniel Park. It wasn't in Seoul. It wasn't even planned. It was at a high-profile tech conference in Singapore, one she had almost skipped. He had walked into the room like he owned the air itself, confident, sharp, untouchable. And yet, when his eyes met hers, something shifted. "You're not like the others here," he had said, his voice smooth but curious. Sarah had laughed softly. "And what does that mean?" "It means," he stepped closer, lowering his voice, "you don't look impressed." She wasn't. Not by money, not by status. And that intrigued him. Their connection had been fast, almost too fast. My private dinners turned into long conversations. Long conversations turned into late-night confessions. He told her she was different. She told him she believed him. And somewhere between the laughter and the late flights, she fell in love. Back in the present, Sarah closed her eyes briefly, remembering the wedding. It had been nothing short of a spectacle. A private ceremony overlooking the mountains outside Seoul. White roses everywhere, cameras flashing, guests whispering about the unexpected bride, a black woman, marrying one of Korea's most powerful billionaires. Some called it romantic, others called it strategic. But Sarah didn't care. Because when Daniel held her hands and said, "You're my future," she believed him, with everything in her. A faint sound pulled her back to reality. The elevator door slid open behind her. She didn't turn immediately. She knew it was him. His presence always carried a certain weight, subtle but unmistakable. "Daniel," she said softly, still facing the window. No answer, just footsteps, slow, measured, distant. Something felt wrong. She turned. He stood near the entrance, still in his tailored suit, his expression unreadable. No warmth, no smile, no sign of the man she once knew. Just cold silence. Her heart tightened. "You're home late," she said, attempting normalcy. "I was busy," he replied flatly. No explanation, no apology, just distance. Sarah studied his face, searching for something familiar, anything that resembled the man who once couldn't go a day without hearing her voice, but she found nothing. Only a stranger wearing his face. "Daniel, what's going on?" she asked, her voice quieter now. He exhaled slowly, as if the conversation itself was an inconvenience. Then he said it. "Pack your things." The words landed like a crack in glass. "What?" "I've arranged for your belongings to be moved," he continued, his tone emotionless. "You'll need to leave tonight." Sarah blinked, certain she misheard him. "Leave? Daniel, what are you talking about?" Finally, he looked at her, but there was no love in his eyes, no hesitation. "I've filed for divorce." Silence. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that suffocates. Sarah felt her body go still, like her soul hadn't caught up to what she just heard. "No," she whispered, shaking her head slightly. "No, this isn't real." But it was. Daniel reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder, placing it neatly on the table like it meant nothing. "Everything is in there," he said. "More the legal team will handle the rest." "The rest?" Her voice cracked. "The rest of what, Daniel? Our marriage?" He didn't respond. Didn't argue, didn't comfort. That hurt more than anything. "Why?" she finally asked, her voice trembling now. "Just tell me why." A long pause. Then, "It's not working." That was it. No fight. No explanation. Just dismissal. 3 years reduced to a sentence. Sarah let out a hollow laugh, tears now forming despite her effort to hold them back. "Not working," she repeated. "That's all I am to you now? Something that just didn't work?" Daniel's jaw tightened slightly, but he said nothing. And in that silence, she understood. This wasn't sudden. This wasn't emotional. This was calculated, planned, final. Her chest tightened as reality settled in, every memory, every promise. Every moment she defended him to people who doubted their love. All of it, collapsing at once. "You don't even care, do you?" she said quietly. Still, no answer. And that was her answer. The city outside continued to shine, unbothered, unchanged. But inside that penthouse, Sarah Benson's world had just ended, and she didn't even see it coming. Morning didn't come gently. It came loudly, violently, and it didn't wait for Sarah Benson to be ready. Her phone buzzed non-stop on the glass nightstand. At first, she ignored it. She hadn't slept. Not really. Just laid there in silence, staring at the ceiling, replaying Daniel's words over and over like a broken record. "Pack your things. I filed for divorce. It's not working." Buzz, buzz, buzz. Finally, she reached for the phone, and everything shattered all over again. The first headline hit like a slap. "Billionaire tech mogul, Daniel Park files for divorce from foreign wife." Her breath caught. She scrolled. Another. "Sources say marriage was a strategic error." Another. "Insiders reveal tension between Park family and Sarah Benson." Her hands began to tremble. "How?" she whispered. This wasn't just news, it was a narrative. Crafted, controlled. And she wasn't the one telling it. Her messages flooded in, but not with support. Questions, curiosity, distance disguised as concern. "Hey, is everything okay? I saw the news. Maybe it's for the best?" And then, silence from the people who mattered most. No calls from Daniel, no explanation, no defense, just abandonment. A soft knock came at the door. Not Daniel, not comfort, just staff. "Oh, Mom, we've been instructed to assist with your packing." The words were polite, but cold, professional, final. Sarah stood slowly, her body heavy with disbelief. "This is still my home," she said quietly. The staff member hesitated. "I'm sorry, Mom. We're just following orders." Orders. That word cut deeper than anything else. The next few hours blurred together like a dream she couldn't wake up from. Closet doors opened. Designer dresses, once worn with pride, were folded without sentiment. Shoes lined up and boxed. Jewelry sealed away. Her life reduced to inventory. 2 suitcases. That's all she was allowed. 2. Sarah stood in the middle of the room, watching strangers pack away pieces of her identity like they meant nothing. "Careful with that," she murmured once instinctively. But then she stopped herself. Why? Why protect anything when everything had already been taken? By afternoon, it was over. The penthouse that once felt like a palace now felt like a place she had never belonged. She picked up her bags. No goodbye. No final look back. Because deep down, she already knew. That place had stopped being her home a long time ago. The elevator ride down felt longer than usual, each floor number blinking like a countdown. 68, 52, 37, 12, until finally, ground floor. The doors opened, and just like that, Sarah Benson stepped out of the life she once knew. Outside, the sky had turned grey. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then steady, like the city itself was mourning something she couldn't name. Or maybe it wasn't mourning at all. Maybe it just didn't care. She stood there for a moment, suitcase in each hand. No car waiting, no driver, no destination, just uncertainty. People passed by her without a second glance. To them, she was just another woman standing in the rain, not the wife of a billionaire, not someone whose world had just collapsed, just invisible. A black car pulled up near the entrance. For a brief second, her heart lifted. Daniel? But the door opened, and a well-dressed woman stepped out, laughing into her phone. Sarah looked away. Of course. Why would he come? He had already said everything he needed to say. The rain grew heavier. Her hair dampened. Her clothes clung slightly to her skin. Still, she didn't move. Because moving meant accepting it, accepting that there was no going back. Finally, she exhaled slowly and took a step forward, then another, dragging her suitcases behind her, each step heavier than the last. She walked without direction. Past glowing storefronts, past couples sharing umbrellas, past a world that continued as if hers hadn't just ended, and then she stopped. A reflection caught her eye in a dark shop window. She barely recognized the woman staring back, not because she looked different, but because something inside her had changed, something broken. Her grip tightened on the suitcase handle. They erased you, she whispered to herself. And for a moment, it felt true. That night, Seoul didn't feel like a city of opportunity. It felt like a place that had swallowed her whole and moved on without a trace. The motel room smelled faintly of detergent and something older, something worn. It wasn't dirty, just forgotten. Sarah Benson stood just inside the door, her two suitcases resting beside her like the only proof that she still existed somewhere in the world. For a long moment she didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even breathe fully. She simply looked. One bed, a small table, a flickering lamp, and a window that framed a narrow alley where neon lights struggled to shine. This was where her life had brought her. She stepped inside slowly, closing the door behind her with a soft click. The sound echoed louder than it should have. Like a final chapter ending, her body felt heavy as she walked to the bed and sat down. The mattress creaked beneath her weight. Unfamiliar, uncomfortable, real. Everything about this moment felt real, in a way her past life never did. No luxury to soften the blow, no distractions, no illusions, just truth. Her hands rested in her lap as she stared ahead. Still, silent, trying to process everything, but her mind refused to settle. Instead, it replayed fragments. Daniel's voice, cold, distant. Pack your things. Her chest tightened. She shut her eyes, but it didn't stop. I filed for divorce. Her fingers curled slightly. It's not working. Stop, she whispered. But the memories didn't listen. They came faster now, sharper, more honest. She remembered the first gala in Seoul, the whispers, the stares, the way people smiled at her but never really saw her. How exotic, someone had said once, thinking she couldn't hear. Daniel had laughed it off, told her not to take it seriously. They don't matter, he said. But now, she wondered if he ever truly defended her at all. She remembered the contracts, stacks of documents placed in front of her. Just sign here, his assistant would say. More, it's standard. And she trusted him, trusted them, without reading, without questioning, because love wasn't supposed to feel like a negotiation. A tear slipped down her cheek, then another, and another. But there was no sound, no sobbing, just quiet pain spilling over. I was there, she whispered, her voice breaking slightly. I was right there, and I still lost everything. Her shoulders trembled as she lowered her head into her hands. Not because she was weak, but because she finally allowed herself to feel it, all of it. The betrayal, the humiliation, the silence. Outside, rain tapped gently against the window, steady, unbothered, like time moving forward whether she was ready or not. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. She didn't know. Time felt meaningless here. Eventually her tears slowed. Not because the pain disappeared, but because something else began to take its place. Something quieter, stronger. She lifted her head slowly. Her eyes were red but no longer lost. They were searching, thinking, remembering. Wait. The word came out softly, almost uncertain. Her brows furrowed slightly as a thought surfaced. Something buried beneath the grief, something she hadn't considered until now. She stood up, walked slowly to her suitcase, opened it. Not looking for clothes, not for comfort, but for something else, something important. Her hands moved carefully through her belongings until she found it. A slim folder, simple, unassuming, but heavy with meaning. She held it in her hands, staring at it like it held answers she wasn't ready to face. "Why did I keep this?" she murmured. Then a faint, almost ironic smile touched her lips. "No. I know why." She sat back down on the bed, opening the folder slowly. Documents, emails, old agreements, details she once overlooked, now staring back at her with new clarity. Her heart began to beat differently. Not fast, not panicked, focused. "You needed me," she whispered, eyes scanning the pages. Memories connected, pieces aligned, before the fame, before the global expansion, before Daniel Park became untouchable. There had been a moment, a deal, a turning point, and she had been there. Not as decoration, not as a wife, but as a key. Her grip tightened on the papers. "And you thought I wouldn't remember," she said quietly. The room felt different now, still small, still quiet, but no longer suffocating, because Sarah Benson was no longer just the woman who lost everything. She was the woman who was starting to understand exactly what had been taken from her, and more importantly, what she could take back. She stood up again, this time walking toward the mirror mounted on the wall. She stared at her reflection, really looked, not at the pain, not at the exhaustion, but at the woman underneath it all. "They think I'm done," she said softly. A pause, then, "No." Her voice steadied, stronger now, clearer. "They made a mistake." For the first time since that night, Sarah Benson didn't feel powerless. She felt awake, and somewhere in the distance beneath the quiet hum of the city. A new story had just begun. Morning arrived with a quiet kind of clarity. Not peace, not comfort, but direction. Sarah Benson stood in front of a tall glass building in the heart of Seoul's business district, her reflection staring back at her once again. But this time, something had changed. She wasn't the same woman who had stared into a motel mirror the night before. Her posture was straighter, her eyes focused. Her pain hadn't disappeared. It had sharpened. She adjusted her coat slightly and stepped inside. The lobby was sleek, polished, controlled. Very different from the chaos she felt just 24 hours ago. "Good morning," the receptionist greeted politely. Sarah gave a small nod. "I have an appointment." The name she gave carried weight, not because of who she was now, but because of who she was about to challenge. Moments later, she was led into a private office. Minimalist. Quiet. The kind of room where decisions were made and lives were changed. Behind the desk sat a man in his early 40s, composed and observant. His eyes studied her carefully, not with judgment, but curiosity. "Ms. Benson," he said, gesturing for her to sit, "I've heard a little about your situation." Sarah sat down slowly, placing her bag beside her. "A little?" she replied calmly. "Then you've heard the version they want you to hear." A faint pause. The lawyer leaned back slightly. And what version is that? Sarah held his gaze. That I was just his wife. Silence filled the room. Not tense, but expectant. And you weren't? He asked. Sarah reached into her bag. Her movements were deliberate, careful. She pulled out the folder, the same one she had opened the night before. But this time, she wasn't unsure. She placed it on the desk and slid it toward him. No, she said quietly. I wasn't. The lawyer opened the folder. At first, his expression remained neutral. Professional, detached. But as his eyes moved across the documents, something shifted. His posture straightened. His brows pulled together slightly. He flipped a page, then another, and another. These, he murmured almost to himself. Yes, Sarah said. Look closely. Emails, negotiation drafts, private correspondence, names, dates, signatures, connections, all leading back to one critical moment in Daniel Park's rise. This partnership, the lawyer said slowly. This was the deal that expanded Park Holdings into international markets, Sarah nodded. And whose contacts made that possible? He looked up at her. For the first time, not as a client, but as something else, something more dangerous. Yours. The word settled heavily in the air. Sarah leaned back slightly, her voice steady. He didn't have access to those networks, she said. Not at the time, not at that level. The lawyer closed the folder halfway, still processing. And yet, your name isn't anywhere on the final agreement. A faint smile touched Sarah's lips, but it wasn't warm. No, she said, it isn't. Why? The question was simple, but the answer carried weight. Because I trusted him, she replied. No bitterness, no raised voice, just truth. The lawyer nodded slowly, understanding now unfolding piece by piece. And now? Sarah's expression hardened just slightly. Now I understand the difference between trust and leverage. Silence, but this time it wasn't empty. It was charged. You're aware, the lawyer said carefully, that taking legal action against Daniel Park isn't just complicated. He paused. It's dangerous. Sarah didn't flinch. I didn't come here for easy, she said. Another pause. Then, I came here for fair. The lawyer studied her for a long moment, measuring, weighing, deciding. And what exactly do you want, Ms. Benson? This time, Sarah didn't answer immediately. She let the question sit, not because she didn't know, but because she wanted him to understand the weight of it. Then finally, I want the truth on record. Her voice was calm, precise, unshakable. I want what I contributed to be acknowledged, she continued, legally, publicly, permanently. Her eyes locked with his. And I want everything that was taken from me. Returned. The lawyer exhaled slowly, closing the folder. You're not asking for a settlement, he said. No. You're asking for a fight. Sarah stood up, smooth, certain. I'm asking for justice, she corrected. For a brief moment, the room was still. Then the lawyer stood as well, and something in his expression shifted, from hesitation to respect. Then we'll need to build a case strong enough to shake his entire foundation, he said. Sarah nodded once. Good. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. Without looking back, she said, He built his empire believing I would never speak. A small pause. Then, that was his first mistake. As she stepped out into the hallway, the world felt different. Not lighter, not easier, but clearer. For the first time since everything fell apart. Sarah Benson wasn't reacting anymore. She was moving, and somewhere, far above, in a tower of glass and power. A man who thought he had erased her. Had no idea she had just become his greatest threat. The city hadn't changed. But the way it looked at Sarah Benson had. At first, it started as whispers. Quiet conversations behind closed doors. names mentioned carefully as if speaking too loudly might make the situation more real than anyone was ready for. "Have you heard? She's filed something. They say she has proof." Sarah didn't chase the noise. She didn't respond to the headlines. She didn't defend herself online. Instead, she worked. Her new apartment was nothing like the penthouse. Smaller, simpler. But it had something the old place never did. Ownership. Every piece of furniture, every decision, every breath she took inside it was hers. Mornings became structured, intentional, focused. She woke early not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Because for the first time in years, her life belonged to her again. The legal case was already gaining attention. Not publicly explosive yet, but internally, it was shaking rooms that were used to control. "Daniel's team is pushing back," her lawyer told her during one meeting. "Hard." Sarah nodded calmly. "Good. They're trying to discredit you." "I expected that." "They're saying you had no official role in the company." Sarah leaned forward slightly. "Then they should have no problem explaining why my work is all over their foundation." The lawyer paused, then gave a faint, impressed nod. "You're not what they prepared for." Meanwhile, across the city, boardrooms were shifting. Investors were asking questions. Not loudly, not publicly, but enough. Is there risk exposure? Could this become public? What exactly is her claim? Because in their world, it wasn't about emotion. It was about stability. And Sarah Benson, she was becoming a variable they couldn't ignore. But the biggest shift didn't come from the case. It came from opportunity. One afternoon, Sarah received a message. Simple, direct. "I'd like to meet. I believe we have something to discuss." No name she recognized, but the tone, it wasn't curiosity. It was interest. She almost ignored it. Almost. But something told her. This was different. The meeting took place in a quiet, high-end office overlooking the city. Not flashy, not loud, just powerful. The man waiting for her didn't waste time. "I've reviewed your background," he said, "not the public version." Sarah raised an eyebrow slightly. "Oh? The real version?" He slid a document across the table, not legal, not personal, strategic. "What, you were behind the international expansion deal," he continued. "Unofficially, of course." Sarah didn't react immediately, but her silence confirmed enough. "That deal," he leaned back slightly, studying her, "wasn't luck." "No," Sarah replied calmly. "It wasn't." Another pause. Measured. Deliberate. "I'm building something," he said. "Something that requires exactly what you brought to Park Holdings." Sarah crossed her legs slowly, her posture relaxed but her eyes sharp. "And what exactly do you think I brought?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Access, strategy, vision, a beat, and execution. Silence, but not empty. Charged." "And why," Sarah asked, "would I give that to you?" The man didn't hesitate. "I'm not asking you to give it," he said. "I'm offering you a chance to own it." That word landed differently. Own. No hidden clauses, no erased credit, no standing in the shadows. "For the first time," he continued, "your name would be on the deal." Sarah leaned back slightly, studying him now, not as someone recovering, but as someone deciding. "And my terms?" she asked. "Your terms?" He nodded. A small pause. Then Sarah allowed herself the faintest smile. Not emotional, not reactive, but earned. "Then we start there," she said. And just like that, everything changed, because Sarah Benson wasn't rebuilding her old life. She was creating something new, something stronger, something that didn't depend on anyone else's approval. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, her presence began to shift. She wasn't just Daniel Park's ex-wife anymore. She became a rising strategist, a key player, a woman to watch. The media caught on, and cameras followed. Questions came. "Ms. Benson, are you responding to the allegations? Is it true you're working with new investors? Do you have a message for Daniel Park?" She paused once, just once, turned slightly toward the cameras, and said, "I'm not here to respond." A small beat. "I'm here to build." And then she walked away. Not chased, not broken, not erased, but rising. Because the biggest mistake Daniel Park made was thinking Sarah Benson needed his world to survive. He didn't realize she was already building a better one. Power had always been quiet, controlled, predictable. At least, that's what Daniel Park believed. From the top floor of Park Holdings' headquarters, the city still bowed beneath him, lights stretching endlessly, a reminder of everything he had built, everything he controlled, everything that was supposed to remain untouchable. But something had changed, and he could feel it. "Sir, we need to address this." The voice came from across the boardroom table, calm, careful, but edged with something unfamiliar: concern. Daniel didn't look up immediately. His fingers rested lightly against the polished surface, his expression unreadable. "Address what?" he asked flatly. A tablet was slid toward him. On the screen, a name. Repeated. Analyzed. Discussed. Sarah Benson. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "She's making noise," one executive continued. "Not publicly, yet, but internally. Investors are asking questions." "About what?" Daniel asked, though part of him already knew. "The expansion deal." A pause. "And her involvement in it." Silence filled the room, but this silence wasn't comfortable. It wasn't controlled, it was unstable. "That deal is sealed," Daniel said coldly, "legally and structurally." "Yes," another voice added carefully. "But if she proves informal influence or undisclosed contribution—" "She won't," Daniel cut in sharply. The room went still, not because they agreed, but because they understood. This wasn't just business anymore. Daniel finally looked up, his gaze sharp. "She has no standing," he said. "No official position, no documentation tying her to the company." But even as he said it, something in his chest felt off, because deep down, he knew that wasn't entirely true. "Sir," the first executive spoke again, more cautiously now. "With respect, confidence isn't the same as certainty." That landed, harder than it should have. Daniel leaned back slowly, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Then find the certainty," he said, "before this becomes a problem." But it already was, because across the city, Sarah Benson wasn't fading, she wasn't hiding, she wasn't breaking, she was rising, and every move she made pulled attention, pulled interest, pulled power away from him. That night, Daniel returned to the penthouse, the same one, the same view, the same silence, but it didn't feel the same. He loosened his tie slightly as he stepped inside, his eyes scanning the space without really seeing it. Everything was in place, perfect, untouched. And yet, something was missing. His gaze drifted toward the window. That spot, the exact place where Sarah used to stand, looking out at the city like she was trying to understand it, or maybe understand him. For a brief moment, he saw it, not clearly, just a memory. Her reflection in the glass, soft, present, real, then it was gone. Daniel exhaled slowly, turning away. "This is irrelevant," he muttered under his breath, but the words didn't settle. They didn't convince, instead. Another thought crept in. Uninvited, unwelcome, persistent. What if she doesn't stop? He walked toward his desk, picking up a report that had been left there earlier. Numbers, charts, projections, all precise, all controlled, until one detail stood out. A delay, minor, but unusual. Another page, another shift. Investor hesitation. The phrase lingered longer than it should have. Daniel's grip tightened slightly on the paper. For years, everything had moved exactly as planned. Calculated, strategic, untouchable. And now, there was friction. Small, subtle, but growing. And at the center of it was a woman he had already dismissed, already erased, already underestimated. Daniel set the report down slowly. his mind moving faster now, connecting pieces, replaying moments, her silence after the divorce, her lack of reaction, her absence from the media storm. At the time, he saw it as weakness. Now, it looked like something else. Preparation. He turned toward the window again. The city lights flickered in the distance. Still beautiful. Still powerful, but no longer entirely his. For the first time in a long time, Daniel Park felt something unfamiliar. Uncertainty. He reached for his phone. Paused, looked at the screen. Her name was still there. Untouched. Uncalled. A moment passed. Then another. Finally, he pressed it. The phone rang. Once. Twice. Then, a click. Hello? Her voice. Calm. Steady. Unshaken. Daniel hesitated for just a fraction of a second, but it was enough. Sarah, he said. A pause. Not long, but deliberate. Yes? No anger. No emotion. Just presence. Daniel exhaled slowly. I think we should talk. Silence. Not the kind he was used to controlling, but the kind that made him wait. Then, her voice returned. No. It was quiet, but absolute. Daniel blinked slightly, caught off guard. No. I think, Sarah continued, her tone unchanged, you should listen. And then, the line went dead. Daniel lowered the phone slowly. The silence that followed was heavier than anything he had faced in a boardroom. Because this time, he wasn't in control. And for the first time since he met her, Daniel Park realized something he should have understood long ago. Sarah Benson was never the weak part of the story. She was the part he failed to understand. And now, it might cost him everything. The courtroom was silent, not empty, not calm, but waiting. Every seat was filled. Executives, observers, media representatives, people who once whispered her name behind closed doors, now sitting in plain sight, watching her every move. At the center of it all, Sarah Benson. She stood at the front, composed, her posture steady, her expression unreadable. But her presence? Unavoidable. This was no longer just a legal dispute. This was a reckoning. Across the room, Daniel Park sat with his legal team, still sharp, still composed, still powerful, but not untouchable, not anymore. Here for the first time since everything began. He wasn't controlling the narrative. He was inside it. Ms. Benson, the judge's voice echoed calmly, you may proceed. A small pause, not hesitation, control. Sarah stepped forward, every movement deliberate, every breath measured. She didn't rush, didn't perform, didn't seek sympathy, because she didn't need it. Your Honor, she began, her voice clear and steady, this case is not simply about a marriage that ended. A beat. It is about a contribution that was erased. The room remained still, listening. For years, she continued, I was present in spaces where decisions were made, but my presence was never documented. Her eyes shifted briefly, not nervously but intentionally, toward Daniel. I was involved in negotiations that directly impacted the expansion of Park Holdings into international markets. A soft murmur moved through the room. But when the results came, she added, my name disappeared. Her lawyer stepped forward, presenting documents. Carefully, precisely. Emails, drafts, time-stamped records, private correspondences, evidence that didn't just suggest involvement, it confirmed it. Daniel's legal team moved quickly. Your Honor, these claims are circumstantial at best. But the judge raised a hand. Let her finish. Silence returned. Heavier now. Sarah didn't look shaken, didn't react, because she had already fought the hardest part, being unheard. I trusted that my contributions would be recognized, she said. A brief pause. But trust, without accountability, becomes vulnerability. Her words didn't rise. They didn't need to. They landed exactly where they were meant to. She turned slightly, addressing the courtroom as a whole now. "This is not about revenge," she said. "It's about record." Another pause. "Because when someone helps build something, they should not be erased from it." The room held its breath, even Daniel, because for the first time, he wasn't hearing her as someone beside him. He was hearing her as someone standing against him. The proceedings continued. Hours passed. Arguments, counter-arguments, evidence, analysis. But the shift had already happened. This was no longer a question of if Sarah had been involved. It was a question of how much had been taken from her. And by the time the final statements were made, the answer was clear. The courtroom fell silent once more as the judge prepared to deliver the decision. Every second stretched, every breath held. Then, "This court recognizes that Ms. Sarah Benson played a material and influential role in the international expansion efforts of Park Holdings." A ripple moved through the room. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "the absence of formal acknowledgement does not negate the presence of substantial contribution." Sarah stood still, listening, not reacting. "As such," the judge concluded, "this court rules in favor of Ms. Benson, granting financial compensation, formal recognition, and legal restoration of her professional contributions." The gavel struck, and just like that, everything changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, but permanently. Sarah exhaled slowly. Not relief, not triumph, but closure. Across the room, Daniel sat still, silent, processing, not just the loss, but the realization. He hadn't just lost a case. He had lost control of a narrative he thought he owned, and more than that, he had lost the woman who helped him build it. Outside the courthouse, the world was anything but quiet. Cameras flashed, voices called out, energy surged. "Sarah, over here!" "Miss Benson, how do you feel about the verdict?" "Do you have a message for Daniel Park?" She stepped out into the light. No hesitation, no fear, just presence. For a moment she paused. Not for them, but for herself. Then she looked forward, directly into the cameras. "Yes," she said. A brief silence followed. "You should have never underestimated the woman you tried to erase. No anger, no bitterness, just truth. And with that," she turned and walked away. Not as someone who had been abandoned, not as someone who had been broken, but as someone who had reclaimed her name, her identity, her power. Because in the end, Sarah Benson didn't just win a case, she rewrote the story, and this time, her name stayed in it.